Hello and welcome back to Democracy, everybody. Welcome back to Helldivers 2, where today we're going to be talking about the armor passives that I feel like could get a buff. I was originally going to be going over this like I did with the primary, secondary weapons and the grenades, but decided that that wasn't really such a great idea because a lot of the armor effects in Helldivers 2 are perfectly fine. There wouldn't really be much to say about like engineering kit. You get extra grenades. Cool. Nothing needs to change about it. Extra padding, you get tankier. Cool, nothing needs to change. So instead I came up with 5 of them that I think would be kind of cool to be changed. Now I'm still going to try to keep them on theme with what they're going for with these armors and not just radically change them to where, you know, maybe this one should get like a deployable shield on it baseline or something like that. I'm going to try to keep it to where it's still functioning basically the same way that it does in the game, but maybe a little bit better. So first up, let's talk about 2 armors that I don't think are really problematic, but would be kind of cool to see them buffed because they're not always the best. So first up is integrated explosives. Integrated explosives makes it so whenever you die, then you explode and deal a lot of damage to everything nearby. Now the explosion is quite powerful with this, and it does have anti-tank armor on that explosion, but you can't really control where your body goes. So sometimes if you die and you're way far away from enemies, the explosion doesn't do anything. The explosion can also hit allies. I think both those things should kind of stay because it's a risk-reward type of thing for actually wearing the armor in general. And again, this armor does only trigger if you die. So if you're staying alive a very long time, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of value out of this armor, which is why you don't really see integrated explosives armor being picked basically ever. It was picked quite a lot when it first came out because it was a pretty silly meme, but other than that, it hasn't really been picked. So there's a couple ways that I think you could actually buff this to make it a little bit better. One is maybe make it so it affects support weapons, specifically explosive support weapons, where it can give them some sort of extra something, maybe gives them a little bit more damage. That doesn't really make sense so much with this, and a lot of the explosive weapons don't necessarily need more damage, but it might be nice for like the grenade launcher or the EATs to make them a little bit more consistent. That could be potentially good. It probably wouldn't do a whole lot to the recoilless rifle. You could give it extra ammo with those, but again, that might only affect things like the recoilless rifle or the Wasp. So you could do it that way. You could also potentially make it so it has slightly faster reload speed with explosive weapons. You know, you're more familiar with explosives, so you could reload them a little bit quicker, reload the grenade launcher slightly faster, or the recoilless rifle a little bit quicker. I guess it wouldn't really work for the EATs, but it would be kind of cool for those weapons, so it would at least have something a little bit extra if you wanted to put it in a particular build. Another thing you could do is maybe make it so all of your explosives have slightly bigger explosion radiuses than normal. So if it does explosive damage, a little bit bigger radius, whether that be thrown grenades, recoilless rifle, EATs, I guess even things like the Quasar Cannon might be affected by this one. I'm not really sure how to keep this one more or less the same without making it quite a bit different, because blowing yourself up is kind of funny, but it's not always very effective. It doesn't always help. I guess another way you could do this is when you die, maybe make it so you can magnetize your body to the nearest enemy or something. I don't really know how that would work, but maybe switch on a magnet or have a second. I don't know if you'd really have a second mode for your armor, but something like that could be also kind of silly. Our second armor is Democracy Protects. Now this passive is honestly pretty cool, where this one makes it so there's a chance that you just survive a thing that would normally kill you. So you have a 50-50 chance of this triggering. It can be potentially pretty good, especially if you're playing with maybe newer players or maybe players that are a little bit more lax with all of their explosives and everything else they're throwing out, especially their stratagems. But it's another armor that you don't see too often. There's actually quite a few medium armors that have this, and I think there's a light and a heavy one too. I could be wrong about that. But Democracy or Protects is not an armor that you see too often being used. And I think one thing that you could do that might make this a little bit too strong, but it would still kind of keep with the theme, is that you could potentially make it so it rolls on every damage hit. That might be a little bit too strong, especially against certain enemy types, to where you could just keep rolling and not dying, so you basically have a dodge build at that point. You could always change that percentage to be quite a bit lower, like how the 50% chance to survive a lethal hit is there, but then make it so like a non-lethal hit has like a 5% chance or a 2% chance or something. Just so then you have slight amounts of dodge, but I don't think it would be necessarily game breaking. It would just be kind of funny in times when it would trigger multiple times. Another thing is you could potentially have it ignore a percentage of friendly fire as well. I don't know if you'd want to have that for all the stratagems though, because most of the stratagems could potentially kill you, so I think the passive would be fine on that, but maybe like small arms fire and like explosives and stuff, that could potentially help a little bit, just because this is like, again, kind of the starting armor, so maybe make it a little bit more forgiving for people that are just getting into the game. So something like that I think would be kind of a cool bonus, and I think you'd see Democracy Protects a lot more. The third one I'd like to talk about is the Electrical Conduit, and this one is kind of interesting because this one gives you 95% resistance towards arc damage. that is pretty good because some of the arcs can do a lot of damage, like Tesla Tower can still kill you actually pretty fast even if you have this armor on. And that's kind of the only thing it's really protecting you against most of the time. Now, you can have your own Tesla Tower, the Illuminate can have a Tesla Tower, and the Harvesters can also zap you with lightning. The only other time that you're going to be getting hit with lightning, though, is from potential friendly fire, either from like the Arc Blitzer or the Arc Thrower. So this armor kind of has limited use, and again, you don't see it too often. One thing that I think you could do is maybe make it so those electric weapons, specifically the Arc Thrower and the Blitzer, could potentially get a little bit longer effective range with this, making it so if you wanted to go with an electric build, that would help. This armor could be better if they end up adding more electricity enemies in the future or more electricity stratagems, since we really only have the Tesla Tower right now. Nothing else can really hurt you that way. So maybe giving this some other option. I would still like it to stay electrical themed, or maybe make it so you could potentially like overcharge the electrical weapons, hold them a little bit longer than you otherwise would, so you can get even more damage out of like the Blitzer or out of the Arc Thrower. I guess you would hold the Thrower longer. I'm not sure about the Blitzer. I guess it could have a even slower rate of fire for more damage. That might be an option. It would be something. Or maybe you could even have that one a little bit faster rate of fire but have shorter range if you have that on. Just something to kind of balance it out, because electrical Conduit is not really that common of an armor that you see either, and it's really hard to build it around electric build just because there's not a whole lot of stuff. Up next is Advanced Filtration, which is arguably one of the worst passives at the moment, and I think this one should get buffed in some way. So this one gives you 80% resistance towards gas damage and the effects of gas. The problem with that is there's no enemies in the game currently that actually do any sort of gas damage. Now, there is like acid damage, and I think that maybe this one should cover acid damage to some extent. Probably not negate it entirely, like you probably don't want to just be standing underneath the Titan and it just vomiting on you and you're fine. I don't think that would be a good idea for this armor, but maybe give it some sort of resistance towards acid, because at least then it would be kind of useful against bugs. The 80%, I think you could honestly just take it up to 100% and make you immune to gas, because at 80%, it's not really hurting you very much, and I mean, you should be completely covered in your suit, hopefully. I mean, you could always make the argument that your suit is getting damaged by bugs, bots, or squids, and that is kind of true. The only way you can gas yourself in this, though, is using the Sterilizer, the Guard Dog with the Dog's Breath, the Gas Mines, and the Orbital Gas Strike. That's it. Oh, and the Gas Grenades. You can throw those out, too. But those are about the only ways you can gas yourself, and even without the gas protection, most of the time, those aren't really that big of a threat. You're not going to die to them right away unless you got knocked down or you were at low health when the gas actually went off. Or I guess if the gas strike actually hit you directly, in which case it would probably kill you. But for all the other ones, you're probably fine to just be staying in the gas for a second, popping a stim, and still walking out of it. So I think Advanced Filtration should get something else. Make it so there's more of a reason that you might want to stand in the gas rather than run away from it. Another thing that I think you could do is potentially just add an effect on this one that completely cancels out the Acid Rain effect on other planets, so that way you're at least not losing the armor bonus from it, because at least then it would also have a niche on those planets. It would only really be good on those planets, but at least it would be good for something then. And then the very last armor effect that I think should get buffed is Unflinching. Unflinching came out with Polar Patriots, and it has not been good. It is probably one of the worst effects in the game, because what this one does is it makes it so it prevents your Helldiver from flinching, meaning that whenever you get hit, you don't get aim punched as much. You get aim punched 95% less, which sounds kind of cool, but in most situations that doesn't honestly matter, because getting aim punched doesn't like make you jump all over the place in this game. Even if it did, it probably wouldn't matter too much just because of how quickly you can kill stuff in this game. So Unflinching should definitely be buffed in some way. This should also have a heavy armor. It doesn't. And you would think if you were going to go with Unflinching and you wanted to stand at the front lines and tank through stuff, heavy armor would be the way to go, but this isn't on any heavy armors, so give this one a heavy armor, and then probably give it something else. I think one thing that you could do with Unflinching that kind of makes sense in the same vein as this is make it so you also have faster recoveries when you get knocked down or knocked aside. I think that would be a nice quality of life bonus for Unflinching, and it still wouldn't be way crazy. It would just be that you could potentially get up faster, or you could make it so you're less affected by knockdowns in general. Maybe things that could knock you down now don't, like if an explosion goes off kind of close to you, it isn't necessarily going to knock you down like it does in other armors. I think that could be another cool option for Unflinching. At least then it would have something. At least then you could kind of run around, still get hit, and still fire back at the enemy, since that seems to be what they really want you to do with this armor, as opposed to just kind of face tanking a couple hits, firing back at the enemy, and then still likely doing what everybody else does of either just killing the enemy or healing and then killing the enemy. So Unflinching is just in a very, very awkward place, and I think that this one needs probably the most buffs. So those were 5 armor passives in Helldivers 2 that I would change. Tell me your thoughts on these and which ones would you change? Would it be these or some other ones? Thank you guys so very much for watching this. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.